Recently, I connected with someone on LinkedIn who I thought could be a really good affiliate partner, and we set up a call. And before that call, I wanted to go into the conversation prepared about who they were, what they offer, that sort of thing. And so I do this typically where you go and you check them out online. You probably do the same thing for people that you might be interested in connecting with or that you may want to do business with. And to my dismay, what I found was a little bit disturbing. And frankly, it kind of made me weary about jumping into business or doing anything with them. The first thing that came up, as is in most instances, was their Google reviews. And when I saw that they only had 8 reviews and that those 8 reviews amounted to only 3 stars, I was a little concerned, which made me dig a little deeper. Well, come to find out, they had one 4-star review and a bunch of 1-star reviews. And I thought, okay, well, that's not sounding too good. Do I really want to align my business with somebody with that kind of reputation? Well, then the next thing I did is I went over to their website and I looked at it and I thought, wow, this is really dated and it has a lot of stuff on it and it's kind of making my head hurt when I'm looking at it. Those were the 2 places that I stopped because that was enough information. So I went ahead with a call, and in the conversation on that call, I told them what I found. And to their dismay, they had no idea. They had no idea that their Google reputation was pretty much in the toilet and that their website was not only overwhelming and confusing, but that people were probably leaving as soon as they clicked over. At the end of the day, are they going to become an affiliate partner? That's still to be undetermined, but at least they have the knowledge about some of the things that they need to fix for their online reputation when they're competing against other software providers. Unfortunately, this same thing could be happening to your practice, whether you are aware of it or not. And you may think, oh, we have lots of reviews, but there are 3 specific places where people are falling out of love with your practice. And that's what we're going to dive into today on this week's show. If we haven't met yet, I'm Alisa Conner, and I help both professional services and medical specialty practices grow not by outspending their competitors, but instead by creating experiences that their patients and customers can't wait to tell others about. Every week I show up here and I talk about the challenges that are affecting patient and customer experience so that you can learn and take what you gain from this podcast and show back to your practice or office and improve things so that you not only attract new patients and clients, but you also retain the ones that are coming to you either organically or again and again. So the first thing I do for these episodes is I go and I do a little bit of research. And I thought it would be relevant to everyone watching or listening to know exactly the impact that online reviews have on your business or your practice. So the statistics that I ran across were from an article from Rater 8, was that 84% of patients checked online reviews before choosing a new provider. That can't be surprising because we live in a very online world. But if your reviews, for example, are even 1 or 2 stars off from your competitor, or they're showing up below your competitor, chances are pretty high you're not as competitive as you think you are. And they're likely choosing that other competitor just because they have 1 star more. Another stat that I ran across was that 43% of patients will go out of network to see a provider with better reviews than stay with their in-network option. That's also not great news. If you are their in-network option, but your reviews are in the toilet, you're losing patients to your competitors, and they're willing, listen closely, they're willing to pay more out of pocket to go to that competitor simply because they have a better online reputation. And then another stat from Harvard Business School stated that a 1-star increase in ratings leads to a 5 to 9% increase in revenue for independent businesses. The effect is strongest for practices not affiliated with large chains. That means independent practices and independent businesses. That 1 star can affect the amount of revenue that's coming into your practice by almost 10%. And that could be very significant depending on what your average patient cost is, or what your downstream revenue from a patient is, or so on and so forth. And the hard part about that is that you may have a referral from somebody, but if they go online and they check you out and they realize that your reputation is not as great as their, say, primary physician told them it was, they may check into someone else and go somewhere else. So the last place that you need to be concerned when it comes to people looking up your reviews is your referring physicians. If you have regular partners who refer you patients and you actually believe they're not going online and looking you up before they do that, I can guarantee you they're part of that 84% that does pre-research that we talked about at the beginning of the statistics list, meaning your reviews aren't just influencing patients. They're influencing the people that send you patients. And when you look at it from that lens, there are 3 places that people go wrong or let things slide when it comes to online reviews. We're going to dive into those next so that you can look at your current process or develop a process that ensures that each of those 3 areas is being handled by somebody on your team and you're not caught off guard, or you're not falling behind your competitors by even just 1 star. So the first place where practices struggle when it comes to online reviews is they simply don't have enough of them. If I were to ask you to go pull up your top 2 competitors and write down the number of reviews they have, and then pull up your own practice and put your number beside them, where are you falling in the rankings of the number of reviews? Because if you're significantly behind or don't have enough reviews for people to take you seriously, then you're already behind the curve and you need to address that situation quickly. Now, you may be wondering why? Like, why does the number of reviews even matter? If we're smaller, there's no way we're ever going to have as many reviews. But if your reviews are significantly less than one of your major competitors, people aren't going to care whether or not you're smaller than they are. They're going to go with the people that have the most and the highest number of reviews. And this is just based on psychology. When you are looking at purchasing something, for example, even if it's an Amazon product, chances are pretty high you're going to look for a product that has the highest number of reviews, but then right next to that, you're going to see in the parentheses how many reviews that was based on. And the reason that is a psychological mind shift is that anyone can go and get 5 or 6 5-star reviews. You can have your friend or your cousin or your mom or your brother or your kids complete a review for you. Well, your potential patients are thinking the same thing. It's like, yeah, this practice has 5-star reviews, but they only have 5 of them. Whereas Dr. Smith has 550 reviews, but he's only 4.9. Unfortunately, we're probably going with Dr. Smith because he has 500 reviews and not 5 that were written by who knows who. So if you are not in the game and don't have your ducks in a row when it comes to collecting or asking for reviews, that is going to be part of your 3-step action plan that's going to be at the end of this episode. The other advantage of having more reviews or asking for more reviews is that every time somebody submits a review on your Google page, it gives Google another reason to come and check out what's happening over there. Whereas if your Google reviews are stagnant or people aren't leaving reviews, they're not coming back to see what's happening. And you may be thinking, well, why do I want Google to come back and look at my page? Well, part of the algorithm is Google determining who is getting more traction on their business profile or their website or whatever it might be, and raising those people when it comes to search results. Naturally, if you have more reviews and they're more current, you're going to increase your spot on Google because Google thinks that there's a lot of people coming here, so it must be more relevant than somebody who hasn't had any Google reviews happening recently or hasn't had any traction on their page. If we go back to that final statistic and we're looking at your referral partners and they're trying to decide between 2 practices to send their patient, If yours has 3 Google reviews and your competitor has 300, they're likely going to lean towards the practice that has more reviews, especially if they're positive, or if there's a close tie between the number of stars that each practice is getting. That number of reviews always comes in to play when people are making decisions around where they're going to spend their time and money. Now, does that mean if you have a practice that has 5 times the number of physicians or staff or whatever, that you have to compete with them one-on-one when it comes to reviews? Absolutely not. That would be impossible. But the other part of that is a lot of the bigger organizations struggle more with reviews simply because not everyone's going to give them a 5-star review. In fact, those larger corporately owned practices struggle more with reviews because they have to work harder to get positive reviews, because more often than not, they've cut the patient experience as a luxury out of their firm, meaning people aren't leaving positive reviews. When you are left feeling like a number, which often happens in those practices, you're not going to leave a positive review unless somebody has gone above and beyond to ensure that you had an excellent experience with their office. So don't let it get you down if they have 5,000 reviews and you only have 500. You just need to do the best you can and boost your number from, say, 5 to 500 as quickly as you can. When we reflect back onto your referral partners sending you patients, if those physicians are going online and they're looking at the number of reviews that you have and they're comparing it to another office, the unfortunate part about this is that if they choose to go with that other office, that's a referral leak for your practice. And it's likely one that isn't being addressed because you don't know it's there, because no one can measure, hey, Dr. Smith went online and he was pitting us against our competitor, and then he decided to send him to the competitor because our reviews suck. If you don't know what you're missing out on, that's a revenue leak, and it's specifically a referral leak. And that's something that I talk a lot about, because if you don't know it and you can't measure it and you're not tracking what leads to those referrals, you have more leakage than you may even be aware of. The sad part is the revenue for your practice was already in motion. That referring physician was ready to send you that referral. But then they went online and they're like, ooh, put the brakes on. I don't think they're the best fit. And then that revenue walked right out the door. Oftentimes I hear from practices and businesses, hey, I don't want to ask for reviews. If you're struggling for asking for reviews, I want you to take a perspective shift with me really quickly. You're not asking for reviews to build up your ego or make yourself feel better. Instead, you're asking for reviews because it's helping you plug a revenue leak that you're now aware of. And so if you can make that mindset shift, it makes it much easier for you and your team and everyone in your organization to get on board and get excited about asking for those reviews and following up until they are completed. So let's dive into the second place where your practice is likely losing reviews. And that is one that most people don't look at, and it's the age of your reviews. A lot of times I will walk into a practice and I'll say, hey, you guys have a lot of reviews from 2019. And they haven't had one review in the last 6 years. So if you have reviews, but none of them are recent, you're undermining the trust level for potential patients. And the reason is that even if they look at the reviews and they go and see that, you have 4.8 stars and Dr. Jones has 4.8 stars, they're going to start reading the reviews. And if they see that Dr. Jones has reviews from a month ago, a day ago, a week ago, a year ago, and all of your reviews are from 2019, they're going to choose Dr. Jones, because there are so many things that could have changed in your practice in the last 6 years. There's no accurate way to measure whether or not the experience that somebody had 6 years ago is going to be the same experience they're going to have now. And so if your reviews are dated, the likelihood that they're going to choose you over your competitor significantly decreases. And I see this happen often because practices get busy and they don't have a process or a system in place to request those reviews or review those reviews or ensure that people are following up and giving them the review. And when it goes by the wayside because nobody's responsible for it, this is exactly what happens is that you have an influx of reviews, a bunch of people that will come in and you'll do a campaign to get people to review your practice, and then nothing happens. And so when it comes down to just as if you were purchasing something online, and you go in, I use Amazon as an example simply because their reviews are easy to leave and they influence so many purchasing decisions. Recently, I bought golf sandals. That's a perfect example. And I looked at all of the different ones that were on there, and some of them were rated very much the same. I think the star rating was 4.4 across the board. Like there was no difference. So then I started going and read the reviews. And the first thing I saw was that one set of golf shoes had good reviews from like 2 years ago, and the other set of golf shoes had reviews from like in the last hour. And so which set of reviews did I follow to purchase the shoes? Of course, the reviews that were left in the last weekday hour, because a lot can happen with shoes, just like a lot can happen with your office in a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year span. For example, you can have team changes, you can have medicine changes that happen in the industry that you have to adhere to. A great example is COVID. Like the world of medicine changed dramatically because of COVID. And so maybe you have some new policies in place that are carried over from that, even though it was quite a while ago now. There can be staff changes, there can be doctor changes, there can be changes in ownership of your practice. And so that modifies the way that you manage and see patients. And so all of those things need to be reflected in your reviews. And the only way to do that is to have current reviews that are showing people what it is actually like to come to your practice right now, not 5 years ago when the world was a very different place. And so you may be looking at this and going, okay, so how will your practice perform if it only has 4.4 stars, but you have recent reviews versus, say, your competitor who might have 4.8 stars, but all their reviews are from 2 years ago? Statistics show recency will always outperform rating. And so if you're concerned that your rating might be a little lower, a lot of times it's lower because somebody will leave a crappy review. It averages the ratings to achieve your stars. But if they're looking at your reviews and you have one from yesterday and they're looking at your competitor and their most recent review is 2 years ago, they're going to take a deeper look at your practice and probably dig even further into your reviews and read like, oh, Sally was a total crab cake, so they actually are a great practice. She just was either having a bad day or had a bad experience, or maybe it's just her. People will make those logical conclusions themselves. You don't have to babysit them through the review process. People are very aware of how they work, but they also are very aware that if all of your reviews are old and your competitors are all new, they're going to use that against you. The other component of this that a lot of practices aren't aware of is you need to regularly update your Google business profile. And I know so many times people will go in and they set up their Google business profile like when they start their business or, for the first time, and then they never go back to it. They never change it. They don't update photos. They don't update the information. Nothing is current. And it works in two ways. One is that it looks really outdated if you haven't updated it regularly. But two, again, Google is not going to go back to an outdated profile that isn't showing anything current or isn't showing some sort of update to the profile. And so if you can regularly update your profile, so if you aren't updating your profile, one, it looks bad to your potential patients because they're like, well, if they don't care about updating this, what else are they not taking care of? And two, it doesn't look good to Google because Google will, again, go back to profiles that are regularly updated and do a scan and say, hey, there's something new here. So if you can add new information or new posts or new photos or new something to your Google business profile on a regular basis, It's only going to help you when it comes to your reviews, to your online reputation, and to the way that you're being perceived by people that are looking at your practice. So, how does this relate to revenue loss? Well, when we're undermining the confidence of our potential patient or client, maybe not even consciously, it lowers their ability to trust us. And if people don't trust you, they don't want to work with you or do business with you. And that's what it comes down to. If you are either not focused on those reviews or not focused on your business profile or not focused on keeping things current and fresh and updated, that is going to come across as these people are not really with it. So I'm not sure if I trust them with my health or with my money or whatever it might be. That gap in confidence is costing you patience. And it's not only costing you patience from people that are going to check you out that would be patients on their own, but it's also costing you patience through your referral partners because I can guarantee you they are seeing the same things that any patient that is Googling you online is also seeing. Typically, when I run an assessment for a practice, one of the top things that comes to the surface is where reviews are. And normally they'll say to me something like, "Hey, we have 500 reviews." And then when I go in to do the assessment, I realize that, yeah, you have all these reviews. However, the problem with those reviews is that most of them are more than 6 months old. And so people are looking at that and they're comparing you to your competitor. And when your reviews are 6, 8, 9 months old and their reviews are from yesterday, they're leaning more heavily toward your competitor. And so that's something we need to address, which leads us directly into problem number 3, which is you may have the reviews. However, you're not responding to any of the reviews. Now, let's be real. Nobody likes a 1-star review. It's a little bit of an insult, to say the least. Like, here you are trying to do your best, and then somebody who's either having a bad day or had a bad experience or whatever that might be decides to go blab about it all over the internet. And that doesn't ever feel good. However, your lack of response is not working in your favor because by avoiding responding or just not wanting to add attention to that review, you're actually doing the opposite. More often than not, I find that clinics don't respond to reviews at all, whether they're 5-star reviews, 3-star reviews, or 1-star reviews. And typically it's because no one's responsible for that particular activity. If that's the case, you're doing a lot of work by gathering those reviews and asking for reviews, and you're leaving a lot of benefit on the table by not responding to them. What practices don't understand is that every time that there's an interaction with your reviews, and that includes responding, Google comes back to see what's going on, which means you're getting more traction in the algorithm for your business page. And if you have enough traction, that raises your ranking within Google search results. So by not responding to those reviews, you're actually leaving money on the table. The best part of this is that it doesn't cost you anything but a little bit of time to make sure that that happens. Now, I've seen where practices will have an auto response. And in most cases, an auto response is actually working against you because when people are reading your reviews, they're expecting to see a response that is personal or in some way specific to the review that was left. And so if you leave the same generic response on every single comment, it becomes very obvious very quickly that either it's copy and pasted or that the review either wasn't read, or if it was, there wasn't anything specific in the review that you could call out to identify that it was specifically for that review comment. Why this works against you is because no one wants to be treated like a number. And when you respond the same way to every single comment, that's exactly how people feel. And so creating some customized or personalized response to those reviews is required, especially in the world of healthcare, where people want to be seen and want to feel like they matter. People's health is a very personal situation. And if you start treating your review response like just another checkbox to be checked off, that's exactly how it's going to come across to your patients and the people that leave you reviews. But let's look a little more deeply at when you don't respond to reviews, what that says about you and your organization. When you respond to those reviews, you're not just having the conversation back and forth between you and that person. And I bring this up because every time you respond, if you are responding with the same thing, hey, thanks for your review, every single time, the people reading that response, they're not only reading the review, they're reading your response. And it makes you feel shallow and like you don't care. And so it's twofold. One, you want to make sure that the people taking the time to leave you that review feel seen and heard. But even more so, you want the people that are reading their review to see the way you responded is in a very human, compassionate way. Because the more you can do that and the better you get at responding, the more likely you're going to build trust with somebody who doesn't know you yet and they're only reading about you online. Now, I started off this section talking about how people don't like to respond to one-star reviews or negative reviews. And a lot of people just won't respond. And that can be damaging in a lot of different ways. The first is that it appears to someone who's reading that review that either you didn't see it, you don't care, or you didn't know what to say. In any way, shape, or form, that makes you appear as though you're very nonchalant about the whole situation and you rather would just have it brushed under the rug versus having some sort of response. Now, I do not recommend getting into a word fight on Google, but responding in a compassionate and kind way to even a negative review is only going to do you favors. So maybe Krabby Sally left a horrible review, 1 star, and it was because she was in a bad mood or she, in some way, shape, or form, didn't feel seen or heard. If you respond to that in the kindest way you can and say, hey, we really, either we screwed up or we're sorry you feel that way, or if there's anything we can do to rectify the situation, let us know. At least you've attempted to. Now, whether or not that person will reach out to you to either change their review or reach out to you to rectify the situation is completely out of your hands. But you do have the ability to show up and be the bigger person. When you show up and you act out of kindness and compassion, everyone that reads that response to that review, they may read her rant about how horrible and awful you are, but they're also going to see that you responded and said, yeah, we're sorry you had that experience and we'd like to make it right. And, sometimes people have bad days or whatever it might be, or that person was going through a hard time. Oh, I don't know what the situation is or how you want to respond to it. But the more compassion and kindness you can put into your response, that's also going to be read. And so if you ignore it, you don't have a way to balance the scales. People will only see her side of the story and they never get to see yours. So you never want to leave a negative review unresponded to, because even if it takes you a little bit of time to respond in an effective way. And when you have that response, it builds trust. It builds trust in whether it's the patient who left a poor review or it's who's reading her review later and your response to it. When you at least take the time and the energy to respond in a kind and compassionate way, they're going to see that in your response. And it's going to factor in to how they are judging, for lack of a better term, your practice. The same can be true with a regular review, a positive review. When they aren't responded to, it could signal to people that you take your patients for granted and that, we just expect you to leave us a review. Whereas if you take the time to respond and you take the time to respond conscientiously, that's going to build trust and confidence in your practice even quicker. So not only do you get the benefit of the algorithm coming back and seeing that there is traction happening on your business page, but you also get the benefit of building trust and confidence in future patients and people that would be looking at you versus someone else in your field to go to for whatever health situation that they're encountering. So I have a challenge for you, and this will likely be part of the action plan as well. And that's to go pull up your Google reviews right now and see how many haven't been responded to. And if it's a list and some of them are older, I would recommend you go in and respond. Even if it's 3, 6, 9 months, a few years old. You could even apologize for not responding. But the purpose of doing that isn't necessarily to get the original poster to respond, but it is to showcase to people that come and read your reviews and who are looking you up online that you do care. And it opens the conversation with somebody on the other side of the screen that you don't even know yet. And whether you're taking accountability for not responding to those reviews, or maybe you didn't know better, or you're just wanting to do better, they're going to see that you responded. And whether or not the person that left the original review ever comes back to read it is really irrelevant at this point, especially if they're older. But it will also show them, or maybe even remind them, that, hey, I left that review and I still believe that. And they responded. And even though it took a little longer than I would have liked, it's really nice to get a response. And so you don't really know what those responses will lead to down the road. But not responding, we know exactly where that leads to. It leads to nowhere. Negative reviews are very obviously the most visible part of revenue leakage. Like if you have an unhappy patient and it's all over the internet, of course, those people aren't coming back. And people that only read their side of the story are definitely going to choose someone else because they're only hearing the negative side. But what isn't as visible is the non-response to positive reviews or the non-response to those negative reviews, because your response to all of those different things is opening up the doorway for a conversation, whether you're partaking in it back and forth with that patient at the exact moment that they're online or not. They're taking in all of the data that exists on that profile. And if you aren't answering things quickly or at all, that's another data point that they're taking to compare you to someone else. And at the end of the day, they're going to add up all of those points in their mind and choose the best option for their healthcare needs. It could just be that those unanswered reviews tips the scale just enough for your competitors to out edge you and take that patient away. So the revenue leak is somewhat invisible. Like if you aren't aware that people are measuring and weighing all of these different components about your practice, then you're likely missing out on all of these opportunities for not only referral patients and referral partners to send people your way, but also from people that are just looking on the internet for healthcare services that you provide. Regardless, this is a referral leakage area that I often help people become aware of. And when we start measuring it and taking action to adjust it, it is one more leak in their bucket that we can fix. So no matter who comes in the door, that's one less hole they're going to fall through. So those are the three biggest challenges when it comes to review. But one thing that I hear often and almost every time I talk about reviews with practices and businesses for that matter is we don't know how to ask for reviews. Every time we ask, it feels uncomfortable, or we forget to ask, or there's a reason we don't have a process around it, or we get complaints about asking for reviews. And so I wanted to give you some suggestions on how to effectively ask for reviews and get people to take action. And the first is don't do an auto blast. Don't do a generic message asking for a review because no one wants to feel like a number. It would be better to personalize it with their name and to say, hey, it was great to see you today. Dr. So-and-so really enjoys being given the opportunity to work with you, and we would love for you to leave us a review if you have the time to do that. Now, let me add a caveat on here, and this is something that I see often. And if you don't have the right technology in place, this may be a little bit challenging for you. But very often, people will be asked to leave a review, and they've already left one. And so if you're continuing to ask people who have reviewed you for another review, that's annoying. And it actually hurts you in more ways than you think, because not only are they annoyed, but it makes them feel like, hey, I already left a review. They didn't appreciate it. And now they're asking me for another one. And so, in some way, shape, or form in your technology setup, you need to tag people that have already left your review so they don't get messages about additional reviews. Or if they do get a message, it's something around, do you want to update your review? Do you have additional things to add? Whatever that might be. But Google typically will not let you leave more than one review for the same business. And so if they know they've already left you a review, they're not going to do it again. So don't bother them with this request and instead build the relationship in a different way. So tip number 1A is don't ask people for reviews more than one time. And 1B is to be sure that you personalize it in some way, shape, or form. Now, along those same lines is the timing for this is everything. And if you are asking for a review and it's 2 weeks after their appointment, they're not going to remember that they even came to see you. And so when you're asking for a review, you need to time it within 24 to 48 hours of them coming to your practice. And the reason is it's almost better if you can do it sooner, because as soon as people leave, they're off to their next thing. And they may have, 14 other things they've done since they've left your office, and they don't even remember what happened while they were there. But the sooner you can get that request in front of them, it's going to add a ticker in their mind that, hey, I'd really like to leave them a review. It was a great experience. And, this happened, this happened, this happened. And I want to make sure that, I put that in there. The sooner you can get the reminder to them to do the review, the better off you're going to be. Now, the other place that the ball often gets dropped is they only send the review request one time. I would recommend, if they haven't left a review and you've tracked that in your system, that you send them a reminder. And so maybe the first reminder goes out within a couple of hours of their appointment, and then another reminder goes out in 36 to 48 hours saying, hey, we really love seeing you. We want to make sure that we're hearing everything we need to hear from our patients to ensure that we're doing the best job possible. So if you would leave us a positive review, we would really appreciate it, or something along those lines. The next part of this, which is one of my favorite topics, is you need to make this frictionless, which means they need to be able to click a button and get directly to your review page. If they're on their phone and they click the button and they go to some random place, or they have to click more than one time, they're not leaving your review. It's too much work. It's too much energy. And you have just crossed the line. So you need to make sure that you're putting the exact link to get them to your review page so that they can click the stars and write what they want to say and hit submit. Any friction you have in between there decreases the likelihood that they're going to leave a review, and likely, in my opinion, decreases the review that they're going to give you. Because if there's frustration involved, that's going to negate any kind of experience they actually had in your office, because it's been so frustrating to try and leave your review. If they have to go and search for your practice on Google, they just won't do it. And there's too many things that can go wrong when they have to go and search and find the review link themselves. And so making it easy for them to just tap that button, which leads me to the next tip, which is if you can get someone in your office to personally ask them for a review versus sending them a message, even better. The time that I have seen this implemented so effectively was with my orthodontist. Every time you would be scheduling your next appointment, as you were checking out, they would say, hey, did everything go all right today? And they would say, hey, have you left us a review yet? And if you say yes, great. Thank you so much. And if you say no, hey, would you mind leaving us a positive review? We're really working on that in this office to ensure that we're meeting all of the needs of our patients. And if there's anything we need to improve on, could you tell us ahead of time, or whatever that might be, whatever spiel it is. But something that is a personal invite from somebody on your team is going to go so much further than a random text message or an email. I'm not saying don't follow up with those things, because it's a good reminder. But if you can get in the habit as much as you can, and with the bandwidth that you have in your power, can ask people on a personal level to leave those reviews, the reviews are not only more likely to be positive, but they're also more likely to get completed. The final tip I have here is that a lot of times practices will wait for the perfect patient before they ask for a review. Everything went well, we should ask them to review us. The reality is there is no perfect patient, and you could be waiting for the rest of your days for someone to start to review you. And not everyone's going to give you 5 stars, and you have to be comfortable with that. That's part of putting yourself out there. But the more people that you ask, the more honest feedback you're going to get, and also the more traction you're going to get online when it comes to reviews and how you show up in search. You don't have to be perfect in this area. Like, most people aren't going to have all 5-star reviews. And if they do, you kind of question why that is. Are those reviews real? Like, I ask those things to myself all the time. I would rather have honesty and transparency and authenticity than I would have perfection. And so if perfection is stopping you from asking for those reviews, I highly encourage you to just put it out there and start asking today. Take one step forward, start asking for reviews, take one of these tips and just implement it so that you can start to gain traction and make the most of the reviews that you have online. If you tune into these episodes every week, you know that I give you an action plan, and I try to keep it under 3 steps so that you can take action, see traction, and get better results. So this week is no different. So let's dive into this week's plan. Number 1 is to go audit your reviews. This might hurt. You might whip out your spreadsheet and go, oh no, but it's okay because you have to start somewhere. If it's just your brother, mother, and cousin who have left you reviews, then you know you have a little bit of work to do. Or if you have, maybe 200 reviews, but they're from 2 years ago, you have a little work to do, but you have to start with that number. So open up an internet browser, type in your business name, and look at your number of Google reviews and write it down. I highly recommend putting this into just even a simple spreadsheet so you can keep track of it quarter after quarter, and you can see how much you've grown, and you can ensure that you're on track with responding to these things and keeping it top of mind with your patient. So once you have that number, then you need to see how many reviews have been unresponded to. And don't cry if it's none, because you're not alone. Like, that's the majority of people. However, it is your homework to go and respond to those reviews in the most customized way you can. And even if that means you saying, hey, we missed your review, we're so grateful you left it, whatever you want. People tend to respond to honesty better than if you were to just brush it under the rug and hope that they didn't notice that it's been 2 years since you responded. That transparency does a lot to not only build trust with that existing patient, but it also shows people that aren't familiar with your practice or aren't patients yet that you have the guts to say, hey, we screwed up, but we're going to make it right. And oftentimes that actually works in your favor versus the story we tell in our heads, which is we have to do everything perfect. We're all human beings. We're allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to let things slide. And in fact, everyone does. And so when you can own that and honestly respond and put that in the review response, your practice's confidence and the faith that people have in what you can do and who you are as business owners actually grows. And then your third step of the action plan is pretty simple. I just want you to set a review goal and create a plan around how you're going to reach that goal. So it can be, we want to get 10 new reviews a week. It doesn't have to be a huge goal. Like, maybe your practice is smaller and you only want to get 3 a week. Write down the goal. There's something very powerful about writing down that goal. And then just 3 steps that you're going to take that you can pull directly from this episode that are going to get you closer to that goal. And then after 90 days, measure and see where you are. You might surprise yourself. Maybe your goal was 3 and you hit 9. That's something to celebrate, not only for you as the business owner, but also with your team, because they're the ones that helped make it happen. When you can have those little celebrations in your office, it boosts morale, it boosts excitement about what you're doing, and it entices people to want to keep working towards those goals that you set for your practice. So, hopefully, this episode shines some light on some things you hadn't been thinking about when it comes to online reputation. A lot of times people think online reputation is just your social media posts or the picture that you took at whatever event you just volunteered at. But the reality is that all of those things blend together, and your online reviews are a very interconnected part of that. And sometimes it's easy to ignore things that we don't see all of the time. And so I'm hoping that this created a little bit more perspective for you around the importance of not only consistently gathering new reviews, but also responding to those reviews so that people feel heard, and also so that people that don't know you can read the whole story. If this episode brought to light some things that you would have rather kept in the dark, then you likely have some other leakage going on in your practice. And what you're not aware of, you can't fix. But when we shine the light on it and you become aware of it, it's much easier to go, oh, that's a problem. And now we need a solution to fix that problem. It's the exact reason I created the referral leakage calculator. It's a simple worksheet that you can work through, and it helps you determine exactly how much your practice specifically is losing in referral leakage. Now, there are likely some areas there that you don't have numbers for. And that's because a lot of the things that we talk about in that worksheet aren't always tracked in a practice, but that's also giving you knowledge and wisdom that you didn't have before. I've included in the worksheet some statistical averages for practices. And so if you're missing a number, it's not going to stop you from doing the calculation. If you want to get a handle on what that number looks like for your practice or practices like yours, you can grab the worksheet for free at alisaconner.com/worksheet, and you can download it and fill it out. In the meantime, I thank you for being here and being a part of this conversation. If you found value in this episode, I would love for you to share it with someone else who could also get value out of it. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, be well, stay safe. See you soon.